Hello everybody, my name's James Peto. I'm the senior curator running the programme of temporary exhibitions in the space on the ground floor downstairs in Wellcome Collection, where we do about 3 exhibitions a year. And our next exhibition, which opens on the 11th of November, is called High Society, Mind-Altering Drugs in History and Culture. It's a rather daunting and huge subject for an exhibition, so I just want to talk through briefly how we plan to tackle such a daunting subject. Unfortunately, neither of the people who should really be sitting here telling you about the exhibition are able to be here. My colleagues Emily Sargent and Caroline Fisher, who've really done all the work on putting this together, are unable to be here. But happily, and much to my relief, I'm delighted that Mike J is able to be here. And Mike has really been our advisor on this exhibition and has helped us from the very beginning to shape it, and you'll see many parallels between the exhibition and between his book, which you'll notice has the same subject, and this is I think the kind of first copy more or less hot off the press, so this will be published by Thames and Hudson to coincide with it, and there are many parallels between the book and the exhibition. And I'm very glad that Mike's here to help answer questions if there are any. So how do I change slides? Should I stand up there? Would that be?
I'll do it for you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, thank you. I guess the first idea that we wanted people to consider is the idea that throughout history and across all cultures, the desire to stimulate or alter the mind or consciousness is pretty much universal. So the exhibition begins with a walk down a corridor which is lined on one side with a long glass cabinet which will have between 40 and 50 objects, and you'll see some examples here. Objects, substances, bits of paraphernalia pertaining to a very wide range of drugs. Here you can see a carver bowl, bottom right, beer, amyl nitrate, tobacco, hookah pipes, laudanum, betel nut cutters, top right, and these curious shoes, top left, are actually snuff boxes that fold open. And to those stimulants and many more, there will be added others such as coffee and tea, so there'll probably be a Starbucks cup, for example, things that relate to substances that we probably don't normally think about as drugs, a teapot. And there'll be very minimal labelling in the introduction, just a recognition of what they are, the approximate date of which they were produced, and the country of origin. So this idea of a universal impulse. Thanks. The next one. Thank you. And then at the end of that corridor, there'll be this rather lovely painting from 1994 by the American artist Fred Tomaselli that gives the idea of this kind of constellation of drug substances, some very local, some very international, some legal, many not, some packaged in and sold on the open market. And the next one. And so to the exhibition itself, I suppose that at Wellcome Collection, if we see ourselves as a building that's really dedicated to investigating science as a vibrant part of culture, what we really wanted this exhibition to look at was aspects of the subject of drugs which show the rich history of scientific experimentation, of literary and artistic inspiration, of economic opportunities and economic opportunism, and also, of course, the biological effects and the social effects. But we had to decide what to concentrate on. Really what we decided was that there were 5 areas that we wanted to particularly look at that were kind of manageable in the exhibition format. The first section looking at drugs from the apothecary to the laboratory. The second section is called self-experimentation, and then we have a section about collective intoxication, a section that looks at the drugs trade, but quite a specific aspect of it because it's too huge to handle otherwise. And finally, a section that looks at temperance and prohibition, and that begins to try to provoke people into thinking about legislation, but without going into too much detail, because that would be incredibly difficult, Class A, Class B, etc., in an exhibition. So I just want to try to give a flavour of each section. So in the journey from the apothecary to the laboratory, we sort of start with the Materia Medica of Dioscorides, written shortly after the birth of Christ in Asia Minor, which listed, I think, over 1,000 drugs with instructions for their use and observations about their effects. Sadly, we don't have an original copy of that, but what we do have is a copy of a rather wonderful St Edmund's Herbal from lent by the Bodleian Library in Oxford, which dates back to the late 11th century, and here a page describing the properties of the poppy. And the exhibition touches on the discovery of new ways that were developed of extracting substances from plant materials, substances which can exist sort of separately from them. And it particularly looks at the introduction into Western society of plants from the New World. And so, as well as opium, we look particularly at cocaine and cannabis, and at the development of a kind of more chemical understandings, essences that could be extracted and mixed and then eventually distilled. Go to the next slide. So laudanum will feature Thomas Sydenham's development of a kind of highly successful recipe with opium, wine, cloves and cinnamon, something that could be bottled and then marketed. And this is actually an artwork of which there will be many in the exhibition, 19 photographs by an artist called Tracy Moffat, which are called laudanum. These are rather beautiful photogravures on rag paper, which show a kind of a sort of filmic story of a laudanum addicted landlady and the relationship with her servant. On to the next one. And again, sort of often looking at relationships between artworks and material objects. So here, the French artist Eugène Grasset's painting of a morphinomaniac, kind of looking rather excited but at the same time desperate. And then finally, this section kind of ends in the laboratory itself. Here, the laboratory of the Californian biochemist Shulgin, who was able to establish an independent laboratory in the Hollywood Hills with the support and licensed by the US Drug Enforcement Agency, with license to kind of create and manufacture scheduled drugs. And he was the person who synthesized MDMA and resulting in ecstasy in 1976. An extraordinary photograph that kind of looks very much like an alchemist's lab, I think. And then on to the next one, please. Thanks. A section on self-experimentation, and the next slide. Beginning with Humphrey Davy and the discovery of nitrous oxide. I think Davy experimented a lot on animals to begin with, but of course, as Mike eloquently says in his book, I think animals aren't able to report back on their experiences or on their thoughts and sensations, and so Davy experimented a lot on himself, and I think he introduced nitrous oxide to Coleridge, is that right? And a whole line of kind of self-experimenters. He wrote about discovering nitrous oxide, a highly pleasurable thrilling in the chest. And then we look at some of those artists and writers who are happy to sort of take up the challenge of trying to find out what some of these new drugs might do to one's consciousness. So we're very lucky to be able to borrow a manuscript from Kubla Khan from the British Library. And then also going back further, back again, top right, rather blurred, but this is a fantastic thing, which is a logbook from a naval captain, Thomas Bowery, from 1669, in which he reports on his voyages with his crew in the Bay of Bengal.